It's been a while since nothing came with a new smartphone, apart from the 2A Plus, which was a refreshed version of the 2A. And after so many leaks and teasers, nothing finally came with their new smartphones, and interestingly, this time we get two versions of the A series, the Nothing Phone 3A and the 3A Pro. So without waste of time, let's talk about it. Okay, so the Nothing Phone 3A comes at $379 and the 3A Pro comes at $459. Both of these phones are under $500 and are considered mid-ranges, but the funny thing is that these two tend to look and feel like flagships, and this is mostly the case for the 3A Pro. Now let's start with the design. The Nothing Phone 3A still has the same design language as its predecessor, the 2A, but a little bit bigger. Both are at 6.77 inches, not 6.8 but very close. The 3A kinda has a divided design, like at the top we get the Glyph Interface, which is exactly the same as the 2A. And also this time we get 3 cameras instead of 2. At the bottom we have some patterns which are also sort of the same with some different tweaks and changes. And now the back is made of glass instead of the plastic which was on the 2A. And you know, it's a good thing to see that Nothing's now using more premium parts on their mid-range smartphones. And by the way, this blue color on the 3A is dope. And the thing is that they kinda have the confidence to stick to their current design and do a little bit of upgrade, but also they got the guts to go for the new design, which applies to the Nothing Phone 3A Pro, and it looks different. The thing with Nothing is that they want their designs to be different and interesting, and they kinda did make this phone interesting. So this phone looks similar, but it has a totally different camera layout. It has a periscope telephoto camera, which one of its advantages is that it lets more light to come to the lens, so you can capture more details. And as for the water and dust resistance, well, we got IP64, which is an upgrade from IP54 on the 2A, which means that these phones are more resistant to water and dust. Okay, now let's talk about the displays. Like I said, we got a 6.77-inch display on both of these phones. Both are 120Hz obviously, and we got a 2160Hz PWM, so it doesn't hurt your eyes if you're sensitive to screen flicker. And both of these phones go up to 3000 nits of brightness, and that means that you'd be just fine using it outdoors. Thankfully, the brightness isn't a big challenge anymore nowadays, especially for the mid-range devices. Nowadays, every smartphone got 3000 nits of brightness. And even though these phones are massive, the resolution is Full HD+, which is pretty reasonable for the price. It's pretty solid and crisp. And the display supports 1 billion colors. This means that we got HDR10+ support, so you can just enjoy high dynamic range videos. And at the bottom we got an optical fingerprint scanner, which is decent. I mean, obviously it isn't as fast as the ultrasonic on the Ultra phones, but it's okay. But the funny thing is that for the sake of a higher brightness, the edges are thicker now. Like for comparison, on the left we got the Nothing Phone 2A, and on the right we got the 3A Pro. And the good thing is that they're still even, but you're not gonna notice it much. But hehe, cost reduction indeed. Okay, now it's time to talk about the thing that Nothing really focused on, the camera. They got a 50 megapixel main camera for both, although the sensor on the 3A Pro is a little bit bigger. And as for the ultra-wide, well, we got an 8 megapixel camera for both of these smartphones, and to be honest, in 2025, 8 megapixel for ultra-wide for a phone which is over $350 is a downside indeed. And as for the zoom, well, we got something good. The Nothing Phone 3A got a 2x telephoto, but like I said, the 3A Pro got a periscope telephoto lens with 3x optical zoom. And even though that the Nothing Phone 3A got a bigger sensor, the pictures are pretty close. And if you're someone who cares a lot about the camera, you'd better go for the 3A Pro, and the photos that I'm gonna show you are taken on that phone. As you can see on the sample shots, the photos you take are a bit contrasty, which is similar to the photos you take on the Pixel, and the pictures are pretty solid and the details are pretty good. Now as for the ultra-wide, well, you shouldn't really trust this phone. But let me show you. Since the resolution is low, you'll lose some details, and the sensors are small, so you'll need a proper lighting so you can take a good picture. But overall, the pictures on the ultra-wide are okay. And as for the colors, well, sometimes the phone gets confused and the colors go for a little bit of a warm tone. Not too much, but as close to what iPhones look like in terms of color science. And the contrasty look that I said sometimes blurs the photo and it's a little bit too much. Now sometimes the photos you take on the 3A Pro look a little bit over-processed. Sometimes you lose the details on these guys and the exposure is too high that you have to manually decrease the exposure before you take the photo, which is a bummer. And again, the contrast just blows the colors and the photos look dull. And now it's time to talk about the 3x telephoto, which is on the 3A Pro. and since it's a periscope lens, you should expect some pretty good photos, and you will because the details look so good. I don't know why, but the contrast is a little bit better than the main camera, and it even performs pretty good on higher zooms like 10-15 times, and I can say that this phone is pretty good for zoom photos. Sometimes it's a little bit overexposed, or sometimes there's a small amount of noise, so the photos you take on night mode is pretty good, and you can probably trust this phone. Not too much though. And overall, the cameras on the 3A and the 3A Pro is pretty solid as promised. Now sometimes the photos might be messed up, but sometimes the result is so good that you can even compare it to the flagship smartphones, especially for the 3A Pro. Now as for the night mode and zoom photos, considering the fact that these phones are under $500, the results are pretty good, especially compared to the other mid-range smartphones in this price range. Okay, now let's talk about the performance and battery. Both the Nothing Phone 3A and the 3A Pro feature the Snapdragon 7S Gen 3, which is a pretty solid, efficient, and a reliable chipset for mid-range smartphones. It's not that different or much of an upgrade from the previous phone, the Nothing Phone 2A, which got the Dimensity 7350 Pro. These phones have the same processor as the Redmi Note 14 Pro Plus from Xiaomi, which had a serious heat issue, so let's just forget about it. Using a pretty daily usage like going through social media or playing a bunch of light games or texting some friends or taking a bunch of pictures won't even hurt the feelings of these phones. These phones just perform flawlessly as they should. And even if you play some heavy games like the Call of Duty and PUBG, your phone will work pretty good even at highest graphics. And if you do experience some lags, you can just drop down the graphics and you'll get a solid 60 FPS. And the good thing about these phones is that even if you play these games for like 1 or 2 hours, they just don't get hot. And that's because of the bigger vapor chamber that's nothing been using in these phones. Now considering the fact that the Snapdragon 7S Gen 3 is a pretty solid, efficient processor, which is a powerful one, going through social media, taking a bunch of pictures, texting the friends or calling them, playing a bunch of games and streaming some videos and audios, these phones can easily last you a full day. And at the end you'll get 20-30% left, which is pretty good. Now if you do use it heavily, you'll need to charge the phone twice a day. So Nothing's put a 5000 mAh battery on this phone, which is pretty solid. But I hope that they use the silicon carbon, which can let them to use a 6000 or maybe a 7000 mAh battery on these phones. Who knows? And as for the charging, well, you're not gonna have any problems at all. These phones support up to 50 watt of wire charging. There is no wireless charging at all. And you can charge your phone from 0 to 100 for like an hour. And Nothing has put nothing in the box, so you should get the chargers separately. So the software of the Nothing phones, which is the Nothing OS, was always one of a kind, and I really appreciate the looks of it. Now we got the Nothing OS 3.1 on both of these devices based on the Android 15, and they have promised to support these phones for like 6 years for security, only 2 years for OS. I hope to see 4 or 5 years, but whoever buys this phone probably use it for like 3 or 4 years at most. And you know, the good thing about Nothing is that they just don't limit any of their software related features to their flagship smartphones. Now one of the new features that Nothing brought with these new smartphones is called the Essential Space. It basically works like a memory or a journal that you could write down a note for the screenshot you just took. Then you could just get access to it by just pressing the button, and it takes you to all the things you saved. They probably come with some AI features later, like I don't know, the magic eraser in the photos, or the writing tools, or the text summarization, and etc. And the other thing is that if you set up the phone for the first time, you'll get the option to go for the stock Android, but what's the point of getting the Nothing phone then? Okay, now I talked about all the features and all the aspects of the Nothing Phone 3A and the 3A Pro. And let me tell you this, if you're someone who cares a lot about the camera and the zooms, just go for the 3A Pro and you'll be good for like 3 or 4 years. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to the channel and like the video because that helps me a lot. Thanks for watching. This is BikeForge and see you in the next one.